Welcome to Friendship and Joy with Karen and Suzanne. I'm Karen.
And I'm Suzanne. Today we welcome you to knit along. We're going to show you how to do the basics of knitting. We're going to show you how to cast on. We're going to show you how to knit. And we're going to show you how to purl Continental style.
Yes, both Suzanne and I are Continental knitter. I think I've mentioned that before. So that's all we can show you. Suzanne and I grew up in Sweden, and we were taught how to knit and crochet in school. And we thought, since that is not taught on a regular basis here, that we will share with everybody who wants to learn. It is not that hard.
It's true. In Sweden, just like Karen just said, it is very normal for boys and girls to know how to knit. In fact, I think most people know how to knit. It's very common.
If they still do it. It was a few years ago we went to school. But anyway.
No, they actually do. My sister's kids, they go to a school called the Waldorf, which is a very creative curriculum. So I know for a fact that they are taught how to knit.
Yeah. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through the very, very basic and show you close up how to do that.
I am now going to show you how to cast on Continental style. I always use 2 needles when you cast on. It'll be easier knitting your first row. You won't have to struggle as much. You start off by draping the yarn over your index finger and your thumb as such, and you pull the wool down as such. You pick up the wool from underneath your thumb, and you pick up the wool from underneath your index finger and pull through. Down from your thumb, underneath your index, and you pull through.
So this is how I cast on in being left-handed. I hold the needles in my left hand, and I've had a slip knot that I put on both of them. Then I take my thumb and index finger in between the tail and the working yarn, and I grab hold with the rest of my fingers to create a little triangle. I pull it down, and then I go in with the needles in the little loop by my thumb here, over the yarn, and pull it back through that one loop, and then I tighten the stitch, and now I have 2 stitches. 3, 4, 5. Okay, so to knit Continental style, I take the yarn in my left hand, I wrap it around my pinky finger like so, grab it with the rest of my fingers and drape it over my index finger. That way I have good tension and I can control it with my index finger. Then you stick your needle in through the stitch knitwise. You basically grab the yarn with the needle. I like to place my index finger on that and just basically pull it through and slide it off at the same time. Okay, so to purl Continental style, again, you wrap the yarn around your pinky, grab the yarn with your fingers and drape it over your index finger. And then you bring the yarn to the front. You hold it like so, and then you come in through the stitch purlwise. And with this right hand needle, you basically just grab the yarn, pull it down, place your thumb on the yarn, and slide it back through the stitch. I'll show you that again. In through the stitch, grab the yarn, pull it down, and through. And This is how it looks. Another thing we'd like to talk about today, it's a little bit more serious, but it is the fact that knitting is very therapeutic. If you've gone through tough things in your life, knitting or doing something creative can really help you get through it. And Suzanne, I know that you went through a really tough time a few years ago when your father was ill before he passed away.
About 15 years ago, my father was very ill in Sweden, and I found that I didn't want to leave his bedside because he was in a hospice for a couple of weeks, and I really wanted to stay close to him the entire time. But it's, as you can imagine, it's very sad, it's very morbid. So what I did, and we talked a little bit about that on our last episode, don't have to bring necessarily a huge project. I'm going to show you a blanket that I did, and I have since passed that along to a lot of my friends and
Me
family.
included.
Yes, I'm not sure, I think there's 98 squares in this blanket, and during the duration that I was with my dad, I'm not sure if you can see it, I ended up finishing and knitting this entire blanket, and it was, like I said, if I hadn't had this blanket with me, or if I didn't have the knitting with me at the time, it would have been a completely different story, because it was very joyous. It's a form of meditation. I was with my dad.
And you were sitting there for hours on end by his bed?
Yeah.
And you were doing like one little square at a time?
Exactly.
And you helped to pass the time and to sit with him. I bet you your father, if he could hear at that point, he probably heard, you know, that click, click, click of the needles. That is so soothing. That's how you put kids to bed. Click, 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 click.
So what we would like to recommend is not necessarily if you're in the hospital. If you are in the hospital, don't be afraid to take, we will show you, you know, one square of whatever pattern it is, and we can definitely recommend a couple. It's therapeutic. It is, it really is therapeutic.
It soothes you, especially when you go, and I know in my everyday life, I have a very busy, frantic brain, and my thoughts are jumping 68 miles a minute many times, and for me to calm down, I knit every day to sort of slow down my thinking or slow down my brain, and I feel at peace. Once I get into that Zen mode of knitting, everything slows down and I feel more focused, and then I go on with the rest of my day to do other things. Unless I get stuck knitting all day. That can happen too.
Unfortunately, when we get together, we have so many plans.
Yeah.
Usually what ends up happening, no matter where we are in this world, is we sit and talk and knit.
Yeah.
That's really all we do. And to Karin's point, knitting it shuts your brain, so it is a form of meditation. That nagging voice that you usually hear that tells you all these different things, the
chatter in your mind.
Yeah, it stops. You're there with your knitting.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
One of the reasons we wanted to start this YouTube channel is it has given both, not just Karin and I, but especially Karin and I, but a lot of people that need something to do when, for whatever reason, is happening in your life. And I know there was a point when you needed something to do in your life, and I said, Karin, I'm going to show you how to knit. And at first you were maybe a little reluctant, but...
Well, at first I thought, sure, great, yeah. Yeah, no, I don't know how to knit. I learned how to do it like we talked about in school, and all I could do was a little bit of knitting and a little bit of purling, and or at least I thought I remembered how. So I said, okay, whatever, Suzanne, I'll come over to your house.
I think we said you're going to come over on such and such a date, and we're going to spend the day, and I'm going to teach you how to knit. And we had such a glorious,
it was a beautiful day.
Yeah, it was a
we
beautiful
sat in your
day.
backyard.
Yes.
And Suzanne put a book in front of me and said, here, I want you to knit this blanket, the same one that she knitted when she was sitting with her father. And I said, there's no way I can knit that. Are you crazy? No, I can't knit that. I barely remember how to do it. I can't do it. And what did you say?
Well, after seeing you trying, I thought maybe she's right. She might be onto something.
Yeah. Yeah. But she didn't say that. She said, yes, you can, Karen. Yes, you can. So I remember we going through the basics again, just like we just showed you with the simple knit.
What we didn't know at the time, or what I wasn't thinking at the time, is Karen knits left-handed. She's left-handed.
No, but I mean, I knit the same way.
But to teach you how to knit, you watching me, that's when, oh my God, that was quite funny. Remember?
Well, it was also, I couldn't remember. Like I said, I was very stiff and my posture was, I was sitting like this, and you were laughing at me, and you thought, oh no.
That's right, you were physically limited.
I was just very stiff.
Yes,
and
you were.
But, and here's the important thing, I did not give up. I went home and I sat with it, and I started with the easiest square, which I think we showed you was the brick one. Basically 5 knit, 5 purl, 5 knit, 5 purl. And then you do it the opposite on the other side. And before I knew it, I had made a square. It looked awful. if we can be honest about it, it was like way too long.
It looked awful.
It looked awful.
No, I'm just joking.
But I kept going, and my second square got better, and the third one got better. And by the time I had finished all 98, 99 squares, it turned out pretty well.
And it said...
It took me a while.
Yeah.
But, and here is the beauty of doing that blanket. I'm so happy that you got me into that. And I don't know if I thanked you enough for giving me the gift of knitting. But after that blanket, I could tackle pretty much anything. I had learned how to read a pattern. I had learned how to knit and how to purl. And that's the beauty of knitting. It's actually, all you need to know is how to knit and how to purl. And then the pattern will tell you what to do. You don't really need to think about anything more than that. If you know how to knit and purl, you're good to go.
Or as Karen says, and you take that away, not just in knitting, but in general life. Break it down.
Break it down. Baby steps.
Yes, break it down.
One step at a time.
Look at a pattern, and how many people go, I can't do this.
Exactly. And I would say sometimes I think it's reading a pattern and understanding the pattern is probably the most overwhelming and challenging. So again, this book was so incredible because it was listing row by row, and all you had to do was do what each row said, and if you could just concentrate on one row at a time, boom, you were done. And I like to write down each row that I knit. Some people just keep going, but I like to write down my rows so I know where I am, and then I tick, 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 and before you know it, you have a whole square done. And 5 years later, you have the whole blanket, because that blanket took me close to 5 years at first, but I also wasn't knitting every day. I didn't knit as fast or as often as I do now.
Now, how many times have I called you when you're in Florida? Because by now, Karen has exceeded my knitting abilities. I mean, I know how to knit. I can knit no problem, but sometimes I need a helping hand, and I've called Karen in Florida. Are you awake?
Can we FaceTime?
What does this mean?
I don't understand this pattern. And that's what I think is something we will talk about in the future on this channel too, how to read a pattern and understanding it. There's a lot of little abbreviations to know. But that's the beauty of the internet today. Everything that I learned with each pattern that I have done, I have Googled. I've Googled, how do you do a slip, slip, knit? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you increase, decrease? There are tutorials out there everywhere, and some of it we can show here as well. But yeah.
Don't get overwhelmed.
Don't get overwhelmed. Just break it down. And start with a fairly simple thing, and then keep going from there. So, yeah, I think it's wonderful. It's
too.
lovely. Yeah. So I think that's it for today.
Yes. See
Thank
you
you
next time.
Thank you for watching. Bye.
Bye. Okay, men du kan klippa ihop det här nu.
Ja.
Okay. Today we're going to talk about the basics of knitting. We're going to teach you how...
Vänta. Slower.
Slower?
Ja men gud vad fort du
Jag gjorde det.
Ja.
Okay.
Ta det lugnt. Okej, vi gör om där. Hello!
The basics of knitting.
Vänta. Oh!
Nu blir jag stressad. Okej, fortsätt.
Hello? Okay. Fuck. Okay. We can talk a little bit about... det går inget bra idag.
Du är så stressad
Ja, du är stressad.
för att du måste följa ett pattern. Okay, I'll continue.
Time a few years ago when your father was ill, before he passed away. Okay.